Hey everyone, welcome to the Onyx Path Twitch channel. I'm Stephanie Devan, I'm the developer for the Legendlore role-playing book, and with me is Megan Mackey, one of my authors. So, a little bit about Legendlore. It's a game for the 5th edition fantasy role-playing system about you and me and Megan and everyone else traveling through a portal to a fantasy land called the Realm, where you have great adventures and tragedies and mysterious dragons and people to save and meet. And for our book, which is upcoming, we wrote 4 chapter fiction introductions, and Megan wrote them. So as part of our stay-at-home social distancing Introducing Legendlore to You campaign, Megan is going to read those sections to you. So I'll introduce her first. Megan is a writer, an author, and a playwright. She's an indie author who has published 4 books, The Finder of the Lucky Devil, The Saint of Liars, Death and the Crone, and Saint Code Lost. You can see her at many conventions where she wears the top hat you now see before you. And you can also find her on the mobile convention bookstore called The Bard's Tower. I'm very excited that she was willing to write the fiction for us. I think it's excellently done. And I'm very excited that Megan agreed to read it to you all as a preview. So it's 4 chapters, and I'm going to let Megan take it away.
Okay, thank you, Steffi. Okay, guys, so yes, there are 4 sections. They're only a couple pages each, but this will give you a really good taste of what the world of Legendlore is about. So, the first section is entitled Prop the Door. Are you ready for the greatest game of all time? Connor couldn't suppress his smile as he led the small group toward the farthest door in the campus library basement. Yeah, but where are we going? Nichelle asked, her arms aching from lugging her brother's books the quarter-mile from the student parking lot across the campus green, down the 3 flights of stairs in the library, and at last through the maze of book stacks to the singularly unremarkable door. Isn't this part of the library haunted? Cardinal asked, carrying their own burden of snacks and drinks while following their friends. What are they talking about? Nichelle asked, alarmed. Connor, what is Cardinal talking about? The well-dressed man rolled his eyes. It's just an old rumor. Something they like to tell the freshmen on orientation week. Pulling the door open, the trio was greeted by enthusiastic hails from the other 2 people waiting inside. Professor, this is Nichelle. And Nichelle, this is my professor of medieval history, Riku Kobayashi, Connor introduced as he set his stack of books on the small, worn-out conference table. Riku, or Ricky when I'm the game master, the professor said, the crinkle in the corner of his eye the only telltale sign of age on his handsome face. The Japanese professor stood up to offer his hand to Nichelle, who blushed as she set down her own burden to shake it. Thank you for inviting me, Nichelle returned, sitting down at the table and pulling her black curls back into a bun. Always great to have a new player. I've been running this game for a while now. It's nice to get someone from the outside. So it's all right that I've never role-played before. I mean, I've played roles, but Nichelle stammered. She's an actress, Connor explained. Riku laughed. Then this should be easy for you. Feel free to ask any questions you have. I have a question. Can we exchange experience points for grade improvements on the final? Cardinal asked, as they moved past to deposit the grocery bags onto a second, smaller table set up as their unofficial snack buffet. Still no, same as last week. Riku returned to his seat behind his game master's screen. I still maintain an elective shouldn't be held to the same standards as required classes. Cardinal waved their multicolored painted nails dismissively. This coming from the strictest rules lawyer I've known in the past 10 years, countered Riku smoothly. Oh, and Nichelle, this is Tara, Connor said, gesturing over to the 5th member of the group, patiently waiting on the other side of the table. She's an engineering student. Tara jumped down from the chair, her eyes just visible above the table as the little person came around Riku's chair with her hand outstretched. Nice to meet you, Tara declared. So, what's the story between you 2? She asked Connor. Did Kevin break your heart for good this time? She's my sister, Connor said with an edge, before sliding his character sheet and notes out of the folder. Sister? Tara asked, now looking Nichelle up and down before glancing at a lily-white Connor. His mother married my father, Nichelle explained. We're step-siblings. Do you know what kind of character you'd like to play? Connor interrupted them, pulling out his player's guidebook, ready to flip to the relevant pages. Oh, and Tara, did you bring your new character for me to check over? Riku asked, still setting up a dice tower in miniatures behind his Game Master screen. Yes, but I want to check one thing quick, Tara said, returning to her own chair on the opposite side. Hey, Cardinal. Yes? Cardinal queried dramatically. Would you be offended if I played my character as non-binary? The little person asked. Absolutely not. Viva representation, Cardinal added with a fist bump to the air. So, Professor, Nichelle started, Connor was telling me this part of the library is haunted. Riku barked a laugh. That is the legend, yes. It happened in the 80s, is what I was told, Tara added, getting excited. A group of engineering students and a janitor who helped them died in some sort of experiment. It was in the 90s, and it was a group of pre-med students who were using this very room to study for their exams, Cardinal cut in. They came in to pull an all-nighter and disappeared without a trace. All anyone ever found was their textbooks. And yet it was apparently in the 60s, or at least that's what they told me when I was a student here in the 80s, Riku laughed. A group of kids came down here to play Spin the Bottle and just vanished, and all they found was the bottle. Yeah, that sounds like a curse to me, Tara laughed. Every 10 years, the library demands a sacrifice in student blood. There would be evidence if it was real, like newspaper clippings or something. Unlike you, Lot, I actually check. It's all just urban legends, Connor muttered, without looking up as he pre-rolled his dice. Oh my lord, you were such a spoil sport, Nichelle laughed. By now, Tara had searched her bag and all her papers twice and sighed resignedly. I must have left my character sheet in my room. I'll go get it. Well, please hurry, Riku said, glancing at the cracked, standardized clock on the stained wall. I have to pick up my kids from their mothers in the morning, so I can't be up all night. Once we have Nichelle's character sheet done, we'll be diving right in. I'll be 10 minutes, tops, Tara assured as she picked up her smartphone and went to the door. She hauled it open, only to stop in place and stare. Beyond the door was a nighttime forest bathed in moonlight. What the? Cardinal's voice behind her was incredulous, but Tara couldn't tear her eyes away from the impossible scene. Fireflies were dancing around in the warm summer air, where the chill winter frost outside the library should be. That can't be real, Nichelle said, rising from her seat. They all stared silently, unsure of what to do or say as the sounds of crickets and cicadas strung out a general humming chorus of nightlife filtering in through the door. Then Tara moved, extending her arms straight out. Someone behind her gasped at the abrupt gesture, but all she did was point at the ground. The light! A rectangle of light cut across the grassy ground in front of the door. If it wasn't real, the light wouldn't fall on it, Tara concluded, as if that was all she needed to believe what she was seeing. Tara, maybe you should back up, Riku said, taking charge as he moved toward the door. He set a hand on her shoulder to indicate that she should move backward, but instead, the small woman surged forward, a step into the grass, in spite of the cries of dismay from her friends. When the ground didn't swallow her whole or turn her into a puddle of ooze, she bent down and pushed on the turf with her hand. It feels real to me. With that confirmation and the absence of dangerous creatures pouncing on their friend, the others hesitantly stepped across the threshold into the nighttime forest. Look at the sky, Cardinal exclaimed, pointing up through the towering dark spires of trees to the stars beyond. It's sweltering, Nichelle said, removing her sweater to tie it around her waist. Did any of you feel something when we passed through the door? Riku asked, turning in a circle to look into the library conference room, just in time to see Connor on the verge of crossing the threshold. This is amazing, the young man breathed as he looked left and right, trying to take it all in before stepping out himself and letting the door fall shut behind him. Prop the door, Riku called out too late, just as it slammed hard into its frame. It utterly disappeared into the night. Oh my god. Where's the door? I can't see. We've been lost forever and no one will know what happened to us. It's been 5 minutes. I have a paper to finish. Okay, everyone calm down, Riku shouted over the frantic panic. Wow, Terra breathed in awe. Look. What do you mean, look? It's pitch black, Nichelle squealed, her voice tight with panic. 2 moons, Terra replied. The group looked up through the towering black trees to the expanse of stars, now dimming as a smaller, brighter moon rose to join the larger one in the sky. We're on another planet, Nichelle breathed. She turned to look at each of the faces beside her, now much more visible in the new moonlight. And that's section 1. Okay, hold on a second. I need to wet my whistle. Okay, here we go. Section 2. This takes place like a few minutes later. This one is titled, You All Are Not From Around Here, Are You? The 4 college students and their professors stood blinking in amazement at the strange world they found themselves in. We walked through the door into a new world, Nichelle said softly, repeating herself. Nichelle, Connor admonished though his voice lacked certainty. We walked through an ordinary door. Then how would you explain it? His sister shouted at him. Tara, are you okay? Cardinal asked, setting a hand on the shoulder of the shorter woman when she yelped and leaned hard against a tree trunk. My shoes, she said as she yanked hard at the laces. They're hurting me. Ow! Help me, get them off! Cardinal seized the heel of the shoe and pulled. Tara sighed with relief as the shoe came free, then stared at her foot. What the hell happened to my foot? Is that hair? Cardinal asked, openly staring as they continued to hold the shoe with both hands. You look like a hob. Don't say it, Tara cut him off. Never say that to me. Her face contorted with a pained expression as Riku knelt down in front of her, and Nichelle supported her as he got the other shoe off. There, does that feel better? Riku asked, but Tara didn't respond right away. Looking up, he saw both her and Nichelle staring at him. What is it? He asked, his voice edged with apprehension. Your ears, Nichelle said. Riku stiffened before slowly raising his fingers to shakily touch his ears. He withdrew them sharply, only to touch them again, grabbing the upper tips more firmly. What is it? Connor asked, his voice trembling. They have points, Riku reported. My ears are pointed. It's not just that, Nichelle said. Breaking all propriety, she reached down and turned his face from out of the shadow toward the light from the second moon. You look younger. No, that can't be. It's a trick of the moonlight, Cardinal said, only to join Nichelle in staring down at their former professor. Using a painted thumbnail, they rubbed gently at the corners of his eye, where his crow's feet had once been. At the touch, Riku pulled his head away. Please stop probing me. Anyone else had any changes? Sort of, Connor said. All eyes turned to him. What's different about you? Tara demanded, looking him up and down. He shifted awkwardly before lifting up his arm into a flexed position. The seams of his dress shirt creaked and split, exposing slices of moon-pale skin. It wasn't just the muscles of his arms, but his pant seams were also straining at his thighs. Oh man, that is beyond unfair, Tara cried. I get monster feet and he just gets ripped? Nichelle, Cardinal, anything? Riku asked. Both looked down at themselves but shook their heads. No, still feel like me, Cardinal said. An arrow shot out of the forest thicket straight at Nichelle's head. Before anyone could react to it, she had already whipped around to catch the arrow in midair. Staring at it with wide eyes, Nichelle's hand holding the arrow began to shake. Nichelle, are you all right? Her brother took a step forward, only to be cut off by another arrow burrowed into the ground in front of him. At the same time, a short woman burst through the trees, diving out of the undergrowth. Everyone down, she shouted, as more whistle bleh, one more time. She shouted as more arrows whistled after. She turned in one smooth motion and raised a large shield. Yet even as several clunked against the metal, one of the missiles buried itself into her shoulder. The stranger screeched in pain, but didn't lower her only defense. A raucous group of 5 creatures laughed and growled as they stepped forward. 2 were armed with bow and arrow, while the other 2 had jagged swords, leaving the largest of them carrying what looked like a small tree someone had crudely forced a blade into to create a glaive. "Nowhere to run, Moira," the largest one cackled, slapping the haft of his glaive into his empty hand. "You, lad." The injured woman grabbed the back of Connor's shirt to pull him up from where he had dived to the ground. "You got muscle. You know how to use a sword." "What? No. Kind of," Connor said frantically as he regained his feet. "Well, you better decide that's yes. Take my sword," Moira said, turning her hip toward the young man, offering the hilt for him to take. Seeing her own sword arm dangling uselessly, blood staining her sleeve from the wound around the arrow, Connor swallowed and raised the tip of steel level to his eyes. Drawing a steadying breath, he looked beyond to the grinning creatures. "Youve," Moira called, groaning as she forced her arm to pull out a long dagger, only to drop it. The point stuck into the ground, its handle directed towards Riku as if to say, "Take me." Moira spent no more energy on it, but turned to heft the shield with her good arm in time to block a downward sweeping stroke from one of the creatures. The sword reverberated with a loud clang. Connor stepped forward at the unofficial gong and shouted as he blocked the other sword creature's attack. The 2 archers took aim, and before Riku could wrap a shaking hand around the handle of the knife, an arrow bloomed right beside it, forcing him to jerk the offending appendage back. Instead, it was Nichelle who grabbed the knife. Hefting it in her palm as if she'd been doing it all her life, she flipped the blade and threw, nailing one of the archers squarely in the body and knocking the creature prone. The move distracted the other archer long enough for Tara to bowl hard into their legs, knocking that one over as well. "Give me back my treasure, dwarf," the large creature roared as he tried to bring his glaive down on Moira's head, while she was still engaged by the other sword fighter. Lacking any other weapon, Riku grabbed the arrow still driven into the ground. The point was unbroken, so he thrust it hard into the larger creature's leg right above the knee. The creature roared, but remained standing and paused only a heartbeat before bringing the glaive down. Riku's effort bought Moira time, though, allowing her to shove off her other attacker and spin around in time to block the crude weapon with her shield. "Ha!" she crowed triumphantly. At that moment, a new source of light flashed to illuminate the forest. "What is that?" Cardinal shouted as they turned toward the source of light. "Way out of this mess," Moira cried as she kicked hard at the knee, still bearing Riku's arrow. Her opponent bellowed, this time buckling down enough for her to disengage. Dropping her shield, she used her good hand to grab Riku by the collar. "Run!" she shouted, practically dragging Riku behind her. With a quickness that he hadn't possessed even when he was younger, Riku's feet seemed to find the ground all on their own, and soon he was running beside the dwarf. He slowed down only a bit to push Cardinal ahead of him. "Run! Run towards the light!" Riku shouted. "How do you know that's not?" Cardinal started to ask before they dodged out of the way of a fresh arrow. "Connor!" Nichelle cried to her brother. "Just go!" he shouted, blocking another body blow that was strong enough to push him back a step, even though the creature was far smaller than himself. "Back off!" Tara screeched, and then there was a flash. The creatures shrieked, dropping their weapons as they covered their eyes. "I'm blind," Connor said, standing in disbelief. "What was that?" "Just my camera phone," Tara said, shocked at how effective that was. "Can't see," he cried on the verge of panic. "Follow me," Tara shouted, grabbing his hand. "I'll lead you." She pulled with all her strength to get him started. Connor relented, following behind while holding on to her and the sword for dear life. "This way, damn ya!" Moira's shout echoed off the trees. "Hurry, or you're going to be left behind!" Nichelle, Riku, and Cardinal rushed forward to help Connor up onto the source of the light, a smooth, round platform, seemingly made of crystal. The trees crowded closely around it, barely allowing any space for the group to pass through, and Connor's foot caught on a root, sending him tumbling forward. "Get behind me!" Moira ordered, placing herself and her shield between the group and the creatures once again on their trail. We have to hold them off until the disc moves. The disc? Tara asked, staring at herself reflected in the crystalline floor. She didn't receive any clarification as a tree shook nearby. The largest creature was pounding his way toward them, using his glaive as a machete. His great strength sent shards of bark and wood flying with each blow. We need to run, Riku said, laying a hand on Moira's shoulder. She shrugged him off. Stand your ground, elf, she growled through her teeth before shouting, Come on, I'm ready for you. The encouragement wasn't needed as the creature bore down on the dwarf, swinging the glaive with a wicked bat to take her, and possibly Riku's head off. Light shot up from the disc into the sky. For an eternity there was nothing but radiant white and the hollow lack of all sound. And then the world reformed around them, revealing daylight rather than night. Blinking in the bright morning light, the small bedraggled group took a collective sigh of relief. Cardinal's legs dropped out underneath them, and they slumped onto the ground. Tara stumbled forward and leaned on their shoulder. Connor, are you all right? Nichelle asked, kneeling down beside her brother as he sat up. Passing his hand in front of his eyes, he formed a relieved smile. It's okay, I'm starting to see again. Thank heaven, she breathed in relief and sat down next to him on the ground. What? Why? What? Riku gasped as he stared in a daze at the dismembered arm of a creature still holding the glaive. Steady there, elf boy, Moira said, dropping her shield to the ground with a charming crooked smile. Don't need you passing out on us, especially since I seem to be about to... She fell and would have tumbled to the ground if Cardinal hadn't caught her. Hey, lady, Nichelle called as she joined Cardinal on Moira's other side. What was her name? That creature called her Moira, Riku said, still looking like he was about to faint. Can you help her? Nichelle asked, Cardinal staring down at the arrow still in Moira's shoulder. I don't know. I'm just pre-med. I start EMS training this summer, Cardinal said as they pulled back the clothing around the arrow, and then their hands ignited with warm red light. The light poured out into Moira's wound, the puncture closing up and pushing the arrow out on its own. The next second, Moira opened her eyes and sat up. Thank you. How lucky I am to have run into a priest of Atheris, she said, grinning and rubbing her shoulder. A who? Cardinal asked, stunned, as the light faded from their fingers. How did I do that? Now it was Moira's turn to blink. She looked around at each of their faces. You aren't from around here, are you? And that's section 2. Dun, dun, dun. All right, a little more of this, baby. You got to remember during the new world we're living in, you got to keep hydrated. Okay, section 3. So this takes place a little bit later from those first 2 sections. So the group has had a few adventures and learned a few new skills and are starting to kind of figure out who they are as characters. This section is titled, Always the Paladin That Blows the Stealth Check. Riku stopped in his tracks, staring wide-eyed. That's a 1966 Ford Mustang GT in Tejo. You know, it's funny when you write something and you think you can say it later, but you just can't. Okay. That's a 1966 Ford Mustang GT in Tahoe turquoise. He shouldered his bow. A what? Moira asked, sheathing her axe in response. A car. It's a kind of vehicle in my world, the elf replied, still gazing in awe. I see, the dwarf nodded. A strange thing. The artificer will be very interested in that. Yes, I'm sure she will be. Tara, Riku said into the strange device of crystals and stone wires Tara insisted was a walkie-talkie. Hey, good, you're still alive. Did you find something? Tara's voice crackled through the device. The static was horrible, but that's what they got for building a walkie-talkie with alchemy and magic. More or less. Bring the group in. Excuse me. They will all want to see this. Soon enough, the whole party had joined them, staring at the old timer covered in overgrowth. How long do you think it's been here? Connor mused, rubbing the stubble on his chin with a gauntleted hand. 30 years, I guess? 40? Nichelle said, setting her fists on her belt of many small pouches, all fitted tight and muffled for stealth. Why don't you go over there and have a look-see, rogue? Moira said, giving Nichelle a sidelong eye. I thought rogues were the scum on the bottom of your boot, Nichelle replied icily. Aye, they are, but I might as well use them when you got them, the dwarf replied, grinning tooth-achingly sweet. Hey, it's okay, Connor interceded, softening his voice for his sister. She's just trying to rile you up. If you want, I can... No, I got this. Watch out, Mr. Clunky Paladin, she answered, pushing his hand aside to crouch down as she had learned from Cartier the Quick. Carefully, she moved forward, making no noise as she approached, keenly aware of every sound and motion around her. The others watched her, standing clustered together by the tree line. What do you think, Artificer? Can you use it? Myra asked, leaning over to whisper in the Harefoot's ear. Tara shifted away, rolling a discomforted shoulder. I don't know until I look at it, she harumphed as softly, then fished her former smartphone, now whirring with luminescent tubes and silver gears, out of her pocket. What are you doing there? Riku asked, putting his hand over the screen just as Tara prepared to channel her magic through it. I'm going to run a search, Tara answered. Don't. It takes too much out of you. This isn't that important, Riku said, his immaculate eyebrows pinching in worry. But I don't know a whole lot about last century cars. That's all right. I do, Riku grinned, scratching one of his pointed ears. My uncle had one of those. I spent a whole summer rebuilding the engine with him. Lot of good that will do without gasoline, Cardinal added flatly. Their voice would have been barely audible if it wasn't for the sharp diction. Tara and Connor both eyed them. You know, if you don't crack a joke soon, everyone's going to think your humor went with your hair, Connor quipped, forgetting to whisper. Who's there? A cry shouted from the direction of the Mustang. Nichelle froze 5 feet from it before turning eyes of murder toward her brother. It's always the Paladin that blows the stealth check, Cardinal muttered to Connor's stunned face. How was that for a joke? On top of the car stood another short man, the hair on his feet proudly declaring his heritage, the short bow in his hands declaring his intentions. This is my strange thing, he shouted, his beardless face looking hollow, his eyes bruised. Now shove off before I and my mates feather you from top to stern. We mean you no harm, Riku started, and Nichelle backed up toward the group, but the stranger only leveled his arrow at Riku. I know, elf, and you're going to stay meaning me no harm. I don't think he's got anyone else with him, Nichelle said softly. So what kind of engine does that thing have? A 200 CU? Riku shouted. That made the Harefoot pause. What do you know about it? Quite a bit, actually, if you'd like some help. Shaking his head, the stranger renewed tension on the bowstring. You're trying to trick me. Riku raised his hands placatingly as the rest of the group renewed their grips on their weapons. Not at all, he reassured. We don't want to take your strange thing. I kind of do, Tara muttered. I think we can help you, Riku called, ignoring Tara. In exchange, if we can get the car working, would you give us a ride? The stranger seemed to mull it over a moment and then lowered his bow. No funny business, or I'll... And that was when the Harefoot passed out and tumbled down into the thickets next to the car. The group rushed forward to help. Connor sheathed his sword and shouldered his shield to pick the small man up, but Cardinal beat him easily. Don't touch him. We don't know what's wrong with him yet, Cardinal said as they kneeled beside the Harefoot. Closing their eyes, Cardinal blew out a breath and set their hand on the man's forehead. He's been poisoned, they said after a moment, sitting back to slap their palms together. Light emerged from their hands as they laid them over the stranger's chest. Ecstatic bliss washed over Cardinal's face. The stranger took a deep, easy breath in, and Cardinal released their healing, stumbling back into Connor's arms. Cardinal, Nichelle cried. I got them, Connor said, lifting his unconscious friend up into his arms, before turning and walking a short distance to a tree. Well, that was exciting, Moira commented from beside the Mustang. He's doing better, Nichelle checked on the Harefoot. Those Aetherian incantations Cardinal learned in Medellin are powerful. Soul of a healer, that one, Moira agreed. Well, this fellow is subdued. Let's check out our spoils. Sure, you do that, Nichelle replied coolly. I'll keep an eye on the real owner. Moira didn't seem bothered by Nichelle's derision and chuckled to herself as she hauled open the driver's side door. Riku and Tara had already moved in front of the Mustang, tromping through partially crushed undergrowth to flip open the hood. Yep, 200 CEU engine, Riku said, nodding approvingly. Tires are rotted away. That's an easy enough fix, Tara said, kneeling down to lay a hand on it, much like Cardinal had with the Harefoot. Her purple glow of magic channeled into the tire, and the decayed rubber undulated like a shivering animal before hissing as it refilled with air, the walls of the tire reforming and sealing themselves. Oh, yes, beautiful, Tara whooped as she stood up and beamed at her handiwork. I love magic. Have I ever said that? I love magic so much. She beamed and proceeded to the next tire. Riku shrugged and turned back to the engine, only to be distracted by movement in the cab. Moira, what are you doing? Not much for spoils. The dwarf's voice sounded muffled from inside the car. That Harefoot was obviously living in here, though. She seized what had to be the Strangers Canteen and took a quick drink, then grimaced before spitting it out. Spoiled? Riku asked. Red wine. I can't stand this stuff. Gives me a headache, she said as she capped the canteen and replaced it. So what is this thing anyway? Think of it like a wagon with no need for horses or oxen. Moira blew out an appreciative breath. The magical things from the lands of the gods. Humbles the soul, it does. Riku smiled indulgently, not interested in rehashing his argument against Earth being some sort of land of the gods. Thankfully, it was an opinion mostly confined to Moira. His face turned to worry as he glanced over his shoulder at Connor and Cardinal. For lack of a blanket, Connor had apparently decided to lean himself against the tree and cradle Cardinal in his arms. Just friends, my ox. I got a flying castle for sale, if you believe that, Moira commented, waggling her eyes at Riku. Best we stay out of it, Riku said sternly. Should I get a fire going? Looks like we're stuck here until these two recover. His gesture included Cardinal and the unconscious Harefoot. Tires repaired, Tara cut in. Come on, Riku. Get your elven butt over here and help me figure out what else needs fixing. A short distance away, Connor smiled to himself at Tara's loud enthusiasm. She really has taken to this place like a duck to water, huh, Card? Cardinal groaned and then sighed. What happened? You passed out. I thought healing magic wasn't supposed to do that. I'm not sure. I haven't tried to cure poison before. Must have done something wrong. That's okay, I got you, buddy. Cardinal seemed to stiffen before sitting up to put themselves out of Connor's arms. Yeah, thank you, they said, then got up, readjusting their knee-length robe, giving every indication that they were heading back to the group. Hey, Card, wait a minute. Don't call me that. Cardinal, I'm sorry. Can you just wait a second? I think we should talk. What is it? Cardinal turned back to Connor, folding their hands into the wide sleeves of the robe. Connor blinked, then looked down, shuffling his feet embarrassed. Sorry, I just can't seem to get used to seeing you that way. What way exactly is that? Cardinal narrowed their eyes. Oh, come on, don't be like that. You know what I mean. You've changed a lot since we came to this place. It's been really hard to adjust to it all. Closing his eyes, Connor knew he said the wrong thing the moment after he said it. Cardinal worked their jaw. You of all people should know. They started to growl, but stopped and took a deep breath to force more serenity into their voice. It's nobody's business what I change about myself or not. especially someone who is supposed to be my friend. I don't owe you or anybody else an explanation. It's all just coming really fast, Connor tried again. You've gone from atheist to totally religious practically overnight. I barely feel like I know you anymore. No matter what changes on the outside, you've always been Cardinal. Just stop it. No, Cardinal, you stop it. I've been right beside you every step of the way, but this is more than that. Sorry, I'm being such a burden, Cardinal yelled, all pretense of serenity gone from their voice. A roar interrupted the fight, and probably for the better, as Connor was regretting every stupid entitled word he said. The sound came from the Mustang as it burst into life. Come on, guys! We got ourselves a new ride! Tara called cheerily. Cardinal didn't even look back at Connor as they marched away. So yeah, some conflict between these old friends. And now we're on to the last section. Now, the last section is the end of the story because it's also the end of the Legendlore book. So, a lot has happened, a lot of adventures that I can't get into because I didn't write them. And two, this is pretty much summing everything up. So, just understand everyone's kind of had their full arc, come to their conclusions, and now this is tying it all up. This section is titled, Do You Stay or Do You Go? So this is it, the end of the line, the moment of truth, the time of cliche questions. Everyone looked at Tara, who only smiled and shrugged. Come on, guys, I'm not going to see most of you again. Got to give you all one more joke for the road. Nichelle hugged Tara, tears dripping down her face. You will always be in my heart, she whispered to the young woman who had become a closer friend than she had ever thought possible. You've decided to stay then? Tara asked, tears pooling in her own eyes. When it comes to any decision, you can gather all the data you want and think it over, calculate thoughtfully, and it will all be useless. You will never have enough data to make a decision. Anomalin, the wizard of the Black Mountain, interjected before Nichelle could answer. Why is that? Nichelle asked. Because when it comes to the moment of choice, you're going to make a snap judgment, whatever you do. He smiled and walked away from the now two pensive women. I'm not sure he's a wizard, Tara said as he retreated. That's what everyone says he is, Nichelle countered, and not for the first time since they met the strange man in the Black Mountains. Look at his clothes. The modern glasses alone make him look like an old hippie who wandered into a Ren fair, rather than a kindly, portly wizard I pictured in my mind. I would still recommend you all say goodbye now, just the same, the wizard called back, leaving both women wondering if he had heard them. Anomalin stopped in front of a cave entrance and turned dramatically to look at each of the group. Congratulations all. You have reached the end of your quest, probably, he added with a shrug. Probably? Connor asked, sharing a glance with Riku as he crossed his arms, the proper beard on his face making him look imperious. What's going to jump out at us now? Goblins and trolls or more librarians? Because I am definitely had enough of librarians for a lifetime. The wizard chuckled and shrugged. So that's the way home? Tara asked, pointing at the cave behind the wizard. Right now, it's just a cave, Anomalin answered. Tara narrowed her eyes. And what will it be later? At that, the wizard laughed. I forgot. You did say you ran into my brother Paladin. That one does love his tricky questions. He moved to stand in front. Oops. Hang on, technical difficulty. Where was I? Paladin. There we are. He moved to stand in front of Riku, and Tara realized he wasn't going to answer her question. Wait, you didn't answer me. You're just deflecting. Riku Kobayashi, elf of Earth, an adopted son of the Rainbow Elves, the oldest and probably wisest of your group, Anomalin declared. Riku shrugged with a smile. That's debatable. See, elf? Anomalin smiled. And you are certainly wiser now than you were when you began. The tatters and tears of your cloak support the story of your travels. I suppose, Riku said warily. Anything else you'd like to add? Anomalin prompted. What is this, an after-school special? Tara asked. No idea what that is, but probably. The wizard readjusted his glasses. Riku? The elf knit his eyebrows. I didn't find wisdom in my time here, Master Wizard, Riku said, firmly but not disrespectfully. But I found peace, a kinship I had never known before. Riku looked at each of his companions. I learned so much from each of you. Thank you for that. I need to take that back to my life on Earth. There is too much I left undone. I need to be a better father to my kids and a better friend to my ex-wife. That sounds like great wisdom to me, Anomalin nodded, and he moved on to Tara before Riku could say more. And you, Harefoot, feisty and funny and always straightforward, you've unlocked secrets of artifice and your own potential. Tara shrugged. I learned a few tricks, but you know what, old man? There's a lot more I want to learn, and I can't do it here. Playing with old technology is fun, but limited. Indeed it is, Anomalin nodded. You understand that once you return to Earth, it will be like starting over again. A good portion of what you've learned here will be useless. Tara blinked. Are you trying to talk me into staying? There are no guaranteed doors between your world and the realm. Once you leave, you may never be able to return. I'm just making sure you understand the implications of your choice. What's the point of telling me if it doesn't matter anyway, since I'm going to make a snap judgment no matter what, right? That stopped the wizard for a moment. Chuckling a laugh, he bowed his head to the young woman. And very clever indeed. He winked and moved on to Connor. Sir Paladin, resplendent in your fine armor, you have harnessed the strength within yourself and brought it out to defend that which you love. Well, yeah, I try, Connor shrugged. Is it enough for you? The wizard asked. Connor blinked at the question, then furrowed his brow as he thought about it. The wizard offered no help. Cardinal looked away. Love is always enough, Connor concluded suddenly, before turning away from Anomalin to stand by Cardinal. Connor, what are you doing? They said, looking nervously at everyone but Connor. I'm not truly a paladin, Connor declared. Connor, what are you talking about? Nichelle asked. A paladin dedicates themselves to something higher, and while I've practiced the formalities, I could never dedicate myself to something like that. There never seemed to be anything that truly called to me. Darkoth called to you, Cardinal spat, finally looking at Connor's pained face. Cardinal, we all agreed to forgive him for that, Tara started, but Connor cut her off. I lost my way, and I made a stupid decision that hurt you. My best friend. My best love. He looked at Cardinal, his eyes caught between hope and uncertainty. Behind him, his sister squealed. Cardinal looked at the wizard for help, but Anomalin's face remained a cross between stoic and high as a kite. No help there. What do you expect me to say to that? They answered Connor. The silence lasted an eternity. You don't have to say anything. I intend to stay by your side if you allow me, no matter where you go, and if you won't let me, I'll still love you, but I'll go. Connor. Cardinal's eyes filled with tears. Cardinal Coenabrillo, Abrijo, the child who stands between two families, and now two worlds, singularly talented at enduring the shifts and complications of life. Anomalin cut in. Which world do you choose? I can't choose. I don't want to. Cardinal turned away, and Connor wilted visibly as he accepted their rejection. But wherever I go, I want Connor to be there. They turned around, wrapping their arms around Connor's neck. Connor only realized what was happening a moment later before crowing with joy as he spun his love around. The others cheered as they rushed in to hug the reunited couple. At last, they settled, and everyone realized Anomalin was staring fixedly at Nichelle. Discomfited, she looked at her brother, who squeezed her hand reassuringly. I suppose that leaves me, she said. And what about you, Nichelle? Anomalin asked. Well, I don't know. You tell me, she sassed, crossing her arms defensively. That made him laugh. No one tells you anything. Oh, queen of the shadows, duchess of the streets, hero of the people. You took on so much, and with such speed and urgency. This world was moved by you. You shook it into action in a way I have not seen since I became a mover and shaker myself. The rogue who has been the heart of this group. Nichelle blushed as the others murmured their agreement. Wherever you choose to go, you wherever you choose to go, you will bring that heart with you. It was what you brought with you, and what you will take with you, the wizard intoned. Nichelle nodded, laying her hand on her heart. Yeah, it is. And maybe that will do it. Anomalin broke the figurative spell that had enveloped the group to turn to the actual one he had been casting. The cave! Tara declared in surprise. Around the entrance of the cave, 5 glyphs had appeared, each glowing its own color. With an imperious finger, Anomalin pointed to each. Wisdom, intelligence, strength, constitution, dexterity. And now Anomalin grinned a smile of a much younger and more devious man as he laid a hand on his own chest. Charisma, obviously. The 6th glyph appeared and completing the arch around the cave entrance. A shimmer of light came into being with sparks and sparkles drifting down like falling stardust. Is it really a door home? Riku asked, stepping closer to examine the shimmering. Probably, Anomalin answered. You say that a lot, Tara said sharply. I've never walked through this doorway. In fact, this is the first time I've managed to open it. So why did it open now? Nichelle asked. No idea. I suppose it opens only when the circumstances are right, Anomalin replied. Now, my final question. Do you stay or do you go? And that is it. So I hope you all enjoyed the reading of the fiction parts for our upcoming RPG, Legendlore. I believe there's more information about what's going on with that in the comments below. And also, if you want, to find more of my stuff, because I did write the fiction parts, I also have a book series called The Finder of the Lucky Devil. It is out on Amazon. You just, there should be a link also in the comments to find that book. And right now, it is on sale for 99 cents. So I would grab it while it's still on sale. Other than that, thank you very much for joining me for this, reading. And I hope you were as entertained by hearing me as I was by doing it, despite any technical difficulties. All right. Thank you very much. And